Bore da, croeso nôl gyfeillon. Dwi am siarad yn y Gymraeg. I'd like to speak in Welsh and share for a bit in the medium of Welsh, if I may. Cyn i ni droi at Esgob Mary sydd yn cyflwyno ar ein cyfer ni rhywbeth ynglyn â'r addysg a'n ysgolion eglwysig. Dwi am gofyn caniatad gan y corff llywodraethol am siaradwr gwadd newydd sydd ddim nad oedd ar y rhestr gyntaf pan ddechreuon ni ddo. Mae Mr Nigel Genders yw'r prif weithredwr Cymdeithas Genedlaethol sydd yma ac o'n i'n meddwl bydd yn werth i ni fel corff llywodraethol glywed ohono fo. So dwi'n gofyn am caniatad iddo fo siarad i ni. Ydy pawb yn hapus i roi caniatad i Mr Nigel Genders siarad? Diolch yn fawr i chi. Diolch o galon. Felly dwi wrth yn troi at Esgob Mary sydd yn cyfrifol am cyflwyniad addysg ac ein ysgolion eglwysig. Esgob Mary.
Thank you, Archbishop, Governing Body. We were a little disappointed not to have the Minister for Education with us today, Jeremy Miles. We really hoped that he might attend Governing Body at another time, and we appreciate the reason for his absence. But we are delighted to have the Reverend Nigel Genders with us, who is Chief Executive of the National Society, and he has very kindly agreed to share a few words with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your welcome and your willingness to listen to me just for a minute or two. It's a great privilege to be able to come and join in this presentation and this item on your agenda, because for us in the National Society for Promoting Education in the Church of England and the Church in Wales, founded in 1811, so the original charity that started church schools across the land, and saw rapid growth of education to be primarily focused on the poor and disadvantaged. It's been a real privilege to lead that work over the last 8 years and to see a developing relationship and a desire to work with the Church in Wales and the Church in England together on a number of issues. We've benefited enormously on the National Society Council from having Bishop June as one of the representatives on the council from Wales, as well as Simon Lloyd. And now we're delighted to have Bishop Mary joining the council in Bishop June's place. But a huge thank you to Bishop June for all that she's brought over the last few years. And we look forward to that developing relationship. The National Society has three kind of bold strategic aims as we seek to transform education and the life chances of children and young people. We're about shaping policy, developing leaders, and growing faith. And those three issues around how we do those things are as relevant in Wales as they are in England and vice versa, and we've got so much to learn from each other. And we're really looking forward over these next couple of years to see how that relationship can develop even further so that the National Society is able to support all that you're doing in Wales, and we can learn from what you're doing as well in both contexts. And so we're delighted to have that ongoing relationship. It's something which is a real privilege to be able to educate such huge numbers of children across England and Wales, over 1 million children every day sitting in church schools across England and Wales. And that's a fantastic privilege, and we'll be hearing much more about that and the opportunities, particularly in Wales. But it's a huge pleasure to be here and to be able to listen and engage with this very, very important item. And thank you very much for your welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. I'm genuinely so pleased to have the brief for education. All of us, I'm sure, can remember a teacher or somebody in our youth or childhood who made a difference. For me, it was an RE teacher in my teens, the ever-patient Mr. Twilly, who was able to put up with adult questions and introduce me to the idea that faith can always wrestle with questions, and faith isn't diminished by this. It can be deepened. So I'm thankful to a great RE teacher for igniting in me an interest in theology. Last evening, Bishop Cherry talked to us about the importance of discerning the movement of the Holy Spirit. And it's fantastic that we've got a group of children from St David's Primary School who are going to come and sing to us in a little while and show us some of the work of the Spirit. We always encounter life and the life of God when we see our children worshipping and learning. One of the little boys pointed to my bishop's cross and asked me, is it a ninja weapon? I'm really delighted. My cross comes with permission from the Taizé community. It's the Holy Spirit descending in the shape of a cross. And the Taizé community has a special charism for welcoming young people. And it's one of the things that nurtured my vocation, was finding people, places, communities that welcomed me as a child and a young person. This is a great opportunity for governing body to celebrate tremendous work that's undertaken in our schools. And this morning we're particularly focusing on our voluntary aided and voluntary controlled schools. But of course, in so many of our community schools, loads of our churches also engage in excellent projects and offer great support. We have 146 church schools serving communities across Wales and in each of our dioceses, 141 primary schools, 3 11 to 18 secondary schools, 1 3 to 16 school, and 1 ecumenical joint Roman Catholic and Church in Wales 11 to 16 school. And 30 of our schools deliver education through the medium of Welsh. So in all, there are in excess of 26,000 children and young people currently being nurtured and educated in Church in Wales schools. That's a fantastic, phenomenal number of young people that we embrace within our communities. It would be impossible to talk about our schools at this time without recognising the leadership which staff have shown, ensuring that our children and young people have continued to learn and that their well-being has been a foremost concern over the past 2 years. All staff in all our schools have had to navigate unprecedented challenges since March 2020. Initially reimagining new ways of learning, with staff having to embrace the demands of distance and blended learning, looking after the well-being of learners and colleagues, and ensuring that the most vulnerable didn't go without. Later, adapting schools and classrooms to accommodate the return of face-to-face teaching with all that entailed, including limiting contact, zoning buildings, creating one-way systems, enhanced cleaning, and a host of other restrictions to ensure the safety of their school communities. And all of that has been such a challenge in the face of great tiredness. More recently, since the start of the current academic year, our staff have had to deal with the pressures and disruption of high levels of staff and pupil absence as our schools have stayed open through the most recent waves of the pandemic. In the face of all these challenges, schools have continued to support the development and implementation of the curriculum for Wales. Our teachers and all the support staff are reimagining what and how they will teach, thinking about what we want young people to be and to become, as well as all the things that they should learn. On behalf of the Church in Wales, we would like to take this opportunity to thank all the staff for their dedication and commitment to the children and young people in their care, as well as to congratulate them on all they have achieved in these really challenging circumstances. And of course, all this work is ably supported by our diocesan education teams, who ensure that schools fulfil their statutory duties. And these small but highly effective teams enable our schools to develop clarity of purpose in their life, their work, and their witness. They give support and guidance on the appointment to required functions of foundation governors. They give guidance and support to schools on Section 50 inspections and all the statutory requirements of admissions policies. They work in partnership with a range of bodies, including local authorities, the School Improvement Consortia and ESTIN. And they're involved in the appointment of head teachers and other key members of school leadership teams. As we'll see shortly, they support church schools to develop a vibrant curriculum marked by excellent teaching and learning and underpinned by explicit Christian values, specifically contributing to the promotion and development of high-quality religion, values and ethics resources, as well as collective worship materials, and supporting schools in their developing of spiritual, moral and social education, all the things that characterise our church schools. In addition to all of this, our diocesan education teams support our voluntary aided schools in fulfilling their statutory responsibilities with regard to their buildings. During and since the pandemic, these teams have been working really closely together to develop resources to do with the delivery of religion, values and ethics, which Liz will tell us more about shortly. And here on GB, I'm conscious there will be clergy and congregation members who serve as foundation governors. We really appreciate the commitment and support given to both our voluntary aided and our voluntary controlled schools on their governing bodies. And this support will be especially important at this time when schools have to teach religion, values and ethics in, according to the legal framework, an objective, critical and pluralistic manner, while at the same time fulfilling the requirement of their trust deeds. It's really important that we become acquainted with the Church in Wales supporting guidance for religion, values and ethics, and with the relevant legislative requirements. And there'll be the opportunity for information sessions which are being developed by our education teams, which will be held later this summer. Before I hand over to Liz Thomas, Provincial Director of Education, I'd like to thank her for her work and for her encouragement. Like Bishop John, as he said yesterday, I'm also relatively new in post and really conscious that I'm presenting work that's been done by other people. I'm really grateful to Bishop June, who has been so kind and encouraging in the handover to this portfolio, and to Liz Thomas, who has done all of my homework for today. I look forward to her presentation and to the presentation from staff and pupils of the St David's Church in Wales Primary School. So Liz, over to you.
Your Grace, members of the governing body, I'm afraid that I am a poor second to the Minister today, but I hope that you will bear with me as I explain a little more about the Curriculum for Wales, RVE, and the work that our education teams are undertaking to support our schools. The implementation of the Curriculum for Wales represents one of the most significant reforms in Welsh education for decades. It moves away from a highly prescriptive, content-led curriculum to one that is based on 4 core purposes: that our children and young people will become ambitious, capable learners, ready to learn throughout their lives, that they will be enterprising, creative contributors, ready to play a full part in life and work, that they will be ethical, informed citizens of Wales and the world, and that they will be healthy, confident individuals, ready to lead fulfilling lives as valued members of society. As explained in the papers circulated before this meeting, the Curriculum for Wales comprises in part of 6 areas of learning and experience. And these are mathematics and numeracy, health and well-being, science and technology, creative and aesthetic, languages, literacy and communication, and the humanities. None of which should be treated in isolation. The most relevant for our discussion today is the humanities area, which includes religion, values and ethics. The Curriculum and Assessment Wales Act 2021 made religious education mandatory for all learners ages 3 to 16. It also made some significant changes which affect provision, pedagogy and practice. The most obvious being the change of name to religion, values and ethics from what we would all have learnt in school, religious education. And this was intended to be more inclusive of non-religious philosophical convictions and to reflect the expanded scope of the subject. In addition, the Act states that the teaching of religion, values and ethics should reflect the non-religious philosophical convictions that are held in Wales, as well as what has always been the case, reflect the fact that the religious traditions in Wales are in the main Christian, while taking account of the teaching and practices of the other principal religions represented in Wales. This is a significant difference. Religion, values and ethics remains a locally determined subject, which means that every local authority will have to produce a locally agreed syllabus that has regard for the Welsh Government's supporting guidance for religion, values and ethics. In a further change, all schools, including our family of Church in Wales voluntary aided schools, will now also have to have regard for their locally agreed syllabus. Finally, it is important to note that religion, values and ethics must now be compatible with Article 2 of Protocol 1 of the European Convention of the Human Rights Act, which means that it must be objective, critical and pluralistic. The Church in Wales supporting guidance for religion, values and ethics has therefore been designed to have regard for the national supporting guidance. And in this way, we can ensure that our schools will not be open to challenge. Our guidance has been produced with the support of Welsh Government, who I'm delighted to say are happy with our approach. The guidance is the outcome of significant and very productive collaboration between the education teams from each of the dioceses, together with leaders and practitioners drawn from English and Welsh medium schools, primary and secondary contexts, voluntary aided and voluntary controlled schools. Practitioners from across all school sectors, not just Church in Wales schools, have expressed nervousness about the new legal requirements for religion, values and ethics and what they might look like in the classroom. In recent years, there have been very few professional learning opportunities for staff teaching religious education, and only a minority of teachers have this as a subject specialism. Welsh Government are in the process of developing a suite of professional learning activities focusing on the new religion, values and ethics. But in addition to this, we as Church in Wales education teams are highly committed to supporting leaders and teachers in our schools. To date, our education teams have delivered introductory RVE sessions, professional learning, to over 200 leaders and teachers in our schools. And we are committed to continuing this work through the summer term and future academic years. We are also conscious that school leaders are especially concerned about the objective, critical and pluralistic requirement of the Act. Currently, no one is able to give a clear outline of what this will look like in the classroom. We want our advice, as a Church in Wales team, to be informed by action research. Therefore, in order to support our Church in Wales schools to develop curricula that are both in themselves and delivered in a way that is objective, critical and pluralistic, we are undertaking research over the next academic year that is being funded by Culham St Gabriel's. Its aim is to develop a common understanding of what objective, critical and pluralistic looks like in a primary classroom in Wales. It is also to enable schools to develop opportunities for objective, critical and pluralistic teaching of religion, values and ethics. It is also to strengthen Welsh networks for RVE practitioners and leaders to share and disseminate research. And another important aim is to further engage with a range of faith communities and professionals in Wales to develop cohesive, respectful approaches. To further support our schools in their development and delivery of religion, values and ethics, the Church in Wales education teams have worked collaboratively to develop 3 significant resources: Taith Advent, Ffrindiau ar Byd, and Iaith a Gweddi. All link to at least one of the statements of what matters in the new curriculum. They have been written to support the pedagogical principles of the curriculum for Wales and to allow schools sufficient autonomy to adapt the resources to accommodate the needs of the learners in their schools. Most importantly, they encourage schools to take a much often repeated phrase in this presentation, but hugely important. It encourages schools to take an objective, critical and pluralistic approach to learning. These resources are neither schemes of work, nor are they programmes of study. I'm just going to explain a little bit about each of those resources. The Taith Advent resource is especially relevant in the context of today's world and encourages children and young people to think about putting social justice into action. The resource is best engaged with, as one would expect, at Advent, and focuses on Christian values and welcoming people, in particular, those who seek refuge. Learners engage with the concepts of hope and journeys, faith and refuge, joy and welcome, peace and belonging. For several of our schools, this resource has led them to focus more specifically on social justice, and they are now working towards recognition as schools of sanctuary. And you will hear a little bit more about that later in this session. For Ffrindiau ar Byd, following the Church in Wales declaring a climate emergency, learners were challenged to explore how they could make a difference in their schools, their communities, in Wales and the wider world. The use of resources from our partners in Christian Aid once again helped learners to think about social justice by focusing on how our actions make a difference to our neighbours. The children engaged with the concept of stewardship and what it meant to them. The objective, critical and pluralistic approach is clearly evident in this resource, as learners are encouraged to engage with a range of creation stories from religions and cultures across the world, as well as Christianity. The interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach of the curriculum for Wales gives schools the freedom to make links between different subject areas. In our Iaith a Gweddi, Languages Connect Us resource, the learning focuses on the first statement of what matters in the languages, literacy and communication area of learning. And that says, languages connect us with people, places and communities. By raising awareness of the diversity of languages from a young age, the aim is to enable learners to recognise similarities between languages and to embrace the differences between them. Learning and experience in this area can support learners to develop an understanding of the origins, evolution and features of a range of languages. It is not just about learning a language in itself. Much as the focus of learning in Iaith a Gweddi is language, literacy and communication, a creative approach has been taken to the experiential element of the learning, with the children learning about the words through music. In turn, the subject matter, the Lord's Prayer, enables children to engage with elements of religion, values and ethics curriculum, which encourages learners to develop their own spirituality and thoughts about prayer, alongside learning about religious sources of authority. And we're very shortly going to hear a performance of this very work, which I'm sure you are absolutely going to enjoy. It's a wonderful piece. So we're delighted to be joined this morning. The children are going to be coming in a very short time. I'm sure you all heard them earlier, the joyous sound of young children's voices from the reception area. We're delighted to be joined by the children and staff from St David's Primary School, and a very warm welcome to them all when they arrive. St David's Church in Wales Primary School is situated in the Pentoin area of Cardiff, which in turn is in the Diocese of Monmouth. There are approximately 250 children on roll, 60 of whom, approximately 60, it may be a little bit less than that, doing a head count earlier, but 60 of them also are with us this morning. And we're delighted that the Deputy Head Teacher, Victoria Fletcher, and Bethan Bowen, who has coordinated their School of Sanctuary accreditation, have accompanied the children today. They will be talking about the impact of both Taith Advent and Iaith Agweddi, and the impact that these resources have had on the children's learning and the wider life of the school, as well as what it means to be part of the wider Church in Wales Schools family. Also with us this morning is Tim Riley, who has written this beautiful piece of music that you are about to hear, and worked with the school and the children on the creative element of Iaith Agweddi. Tim has been working as a composer and musical director since the late 80s. In recent years, his work has explored the links between language, music, culture, and identity, and has been delivered in primary school context in Wales. And we're delighted that he has collaborated with us in developing this piece of work.
I think the children are here, Liz.
Thank you. Are they there? Right, let them come in as I'm just finishing off. It would also be remiss of me, thank you, it would also be remiss of me not to mention Carrie Fisher, who is currently the acting deputy head at Llansanna and Llanharry Church in Wales Primary School, who also collaborated on the Iaith Agweddi project, focusing particularly on the resources that looked at the development of language. So it now gives me great pleasure, come on in. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Tim Riley.
Is a welcome here, I think. They're going to sing the Lord's Prayer in Anglo-Saxon. It's over 1,000 years old, these words. How do we know how they spoke then? Well, the answer is because we don't exactly, but many academics have ideas about how things were being pronounced, so I'll try to match them up as closely as possible. But also you'll hear the modern English version, and just to mention, there is also another version of this song which features Anglo-Saxon and modern Welsh, so we've covered all angles with this. Hope you enjoy.
Stevie now. children. Fabulous, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We're delighted to be able to speak with you here today. I'm Victoria Foster. I'm the Deputy Head Teacher at St David's Church in Wales Primary School in Cardiff. As a Church in Wales primary school, our faith and Christian values are at the core of all we do. And over the past 18 months, we've worked closely with the diocese and other diocesan schools on many projects such as Taith Advent, Ffrindiau Byd, and the Islam and Lamentations projects. I've also been fortunate enough to work with a group of specialist teachers from across Wales to develop the new Church in Wales Schools framework for religion, value and ethics. The projects have enabled us to develop our Christian character as a school, as well as deepening and broadening our RE curriculum, alongside the use of understanding Christianity, resulting in high-quality RE lessons that are stimulating and challenging for our pupils. Not only have these opportunities enabled our children to widen their knowledge and understanding of Christianity and other religions, but they've also allowed both pupils and staff to flourish spiritually and recognise their place and purpose within the wider school community. We've also very recently become a school of sanctuary, which we are extremely proud of. A school of sanctuary is a school that is committed to being a safe and welcoming place for all, especially those seeking sanctuary. This could be people whose lives are in danger in their own country, who have troubles at home, or are just looking for a place of safety. A school of sanctuary is a school that helps its learners, staff, and wider community understand what it means to be seeking sanctuary and to extend a welcome to everyone as an equal, valued member of the school community. We are delighted to receive this award and are very, very proud to be a school that offers a place of safety and inclusion for all. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Bethan Bowen, who will speak to you in a bit more detail about the projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Bethan Bowen, and I am the RE leader at St David's Church in Wales Primary School. I feel extremely privileged to have been able to lead on many different projects as part of my role, as well as working closely with the members of the diocese and fellow Church in Wales schools. We began our journey with projects by taking part in the Taith Advent Church in Wales case study, exploring the journey of the Holy Family when they found refuge in Bethlehem, and comparing the experiences of people who are currently displaced from their homes. One of the main aspects of Taith Advent was to develop understanding about why people seek sanctuary and how we might help them. It allowed pupils to empathise with those fleeing conflict and seeking sanctuary. Towards the end of the project, children were inspired with a call to action as to what they could do to ensure that anyone seeking sanctuary would be made to feel welcome and acquire a sense of belonging. The opportunity was extremely successful and an invaluable experience for staff and pupils to expand on their own knowledge and understanding of the wider world. Following on from Taith Advent, we wanted to continue our work in supporting those seeking refuge and began exploring becoming a school of sanctuary. In order for us to achieve this, we involved staff, governors, children and parents to develop their understanding of refugees and asylum seekers and the issues that they may face. Staff and governors received initial awareness training, and further insights were then dedicated to planning curriculum activities around seeking sanctuary. Across the whole school, pupils have been involved in activities to raise the awareness of the experiences and needs of people needing to seek refuge through age-appropriate lessons and texts. This was also incorporated into our collective worship and reflection time. Each year we celebrate Refugee Week to raise awareness of the issues they face, whilst also challenging misconceptions and building non-social cohesion. At St David's, we hold daily assemblies and regular whole school events that explore diversity and celebrate our differences. This includes the celebration of specific events such as Black History Month, Eid, Diwali, Chinese New Year, as well as holding a celebration of cultures and languages weeks and our ongoing promotion of Language of the Month. From working on the Taith Advent project and becoming a school of sanctuary, it has allowed us to make the necessary changes to become a more welcoming environment for visitors and those seeking sanctuary. St David's has signed the School of Sanctuary Pledge and will continue to be actively involved in promoting the school as a safe and secure haven for all pupils. We work closely with the diocese to continue to plan and develop ideas and to share with other Church in Wales schools. Our message is very clear. Everyone is welcome at St David's. I would now like to invite some of our wonderful children from St David's to share their views and what they've enjoyed about our projects.
Last summer we learned about the Big Freeze and each class had a concept of the Christian story to explore. We were able to unpick the creation panel and discuss our interpretation of what it meant to us. It was amazing. In my opinion, the paint pots represented the different days it took God to create the world. From this, I learned that God can do anything no matter how hard it is. I really enjoyed this opportunity as it opened my mind up to think about the creation of the world.
During the Tithe Advent project, we read the story Refuge and explored how Mary and Joseph found safety in Bethlehem. This made us think about the experience that refugees might be facing today. I learned that we are extremely lucky to have shelter and safety. It made me want to help those who are fleeing their homes. At St. David's, we celebrate Refugee Week every year to raise an awareness. Last year, we created banners to show everyone that refugees do not walk alone. I hope to make everyone feel welcome and included at St. David's.
The project was captivating as we got to learn so much in a fun way. We've had the opportunity to learn many songs with Tim based on the history of languages. I believe the song called The Tale of Everyday Gods, written by Tim, taught me a lot about past events as it explains how tribes conquered other countries. My favorite song that we have learned was the Anglo-Saxon piece that we sang today. It is an early version of the Lord's Prayer and what I found really interesting was that languages have evolved over time, but it still has a similar meaning.
We have been working extremely hard to be recognised as a school or sanctuary. Our goal is to make sure that everyone feels welcomed at St. David's and to ensure all children feel loved and safe. As part of our RE curriculum, we learn about the issues faced by asylum seekers and refugees, Black History Month, anti-racism and other faiths and cultures, which I really enjoy and I find extremely interesting. From working on this project, I believe our school environment has become much more welcoming, and I would love to welcome asylum-seeking families to our school. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today and letting us perform.
Plantos, chi'n gwych, chi'n bendigedig. You are absolutely amazing at singing and at speaking. Thank you so much for your contribution. And this is a really tough crowd. I haven't seen a standing ovation here before, and you got one this morning. So well done, da iawn chi.
I just think it's incredibly brave of you to stand up and speak this morning. I know I was nervous, and you were absolutely amazing to do that by yourself. So congratulations, and also congratulations to all of you who sang so beautifully and have given your time to us this morning. I'd like to now ask Bishop Cherry to come to the stage, or such as it is, to present the recognition for the School of Sanctuary. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And before I do that, can I extend a wonderful thank you to Tim for writing such a beautiful piece and that takes in so much language and music. It was a wonderful thing to sit and listen to. And I could see that the young people enjoyed singing it, didn't you? Yeah, we could see that very clearly. Your deputy head teacher talked about you being proud to be a school that offers a place of safety and inclusion. And she talked about you being proud that you're a community that wants to welcome everyone as equal valued members of the school community. And that was wonderful to hear. And I want you to know that we are proud of you. We're proud of your school, that it's one of our Church in Wales schools and one of the Church in Wales schools in the Diocese of Monmouth as well. We're proud of the witness that you are providing in caring for the stranger the refugee and the asylum seeker. And we're proud that, as so often is the case, you, our young people, are leading the way and setting an example to us all. We as a church, I'm sure everyone in this room will agree, have a lot to learn from you and from schools like yours at St. David's. So thank you for coming and sharing your beautiful voices and your gifts, sharing your stories of all the work that you've been involved with. Thank you for being an inspiration and an example to us all. And congratulations on gaining the School of Sanctuary Award, which I'll just hold up and read out. It says, "Proud to be a place of welcome, in recognition of its work and ongoing commitment to engage with and celebrate the positive contribution of refugees and asylum seekers, St. David's Church in Wales Primary School is hereby awarded the School of Sanctuary Award," dated the 26th of April 2022. And you are the first school in this country to gain such an award. So many, many congratulations to you.
Liz, as you go, many thanks to you. We were delighted by that presentation. And thank you, Bishop Mary, for presenting as you did. We come back to the agenda. And I wonder if we could have on screen, please, the draft motion, which we are presenting. Thank you very much. We have it here on screen in English. And we now come to debate this motion. And I believe the Bishop of St. David's is... St. Asaph is proposing the motion. Let's keep you on your feet. Thank you, Bishop Gregory.
Archbishop, brothers and sisters in the governing body of the Church of Wales, what a surprise translation that turned out to be. Well, this motion had a narrow beginning in that it arose out of Sir Paul Silk's question as to how the Church in Wales would respond to the call from the Ukrainian Institute for Religious Freedom to expel the Russian Orthodox Church from the World Council of Churches. I think there can be little doubt that the Moscow Patriarchate deserves such action. The Russian Orthodox Church is headed by Patriarch Kirill, himself a former KGB agent, who has been unequivocal in the support that he has given to Vladimir Putin and to the war in Ukraine. He's made a series of statements which have gradually become more extreme. His first statement merely wished for a swift end to the conflict and for the avoidance of civilian casualties. Fair enough, perhaps, but no hint of criticism of his own nation. His second statement praised the troops for defending the fatherland of Russia and invoked God's blessing upon them. His third statement spoke of the glorious work that Russian troops were doing in defense of true religion and in fighting a spiritual war against evil. This sort of support for an act of aggression surely deserves censure. And if we're to talk about expelling the Russian Orthodox Church from the World Council of Churches, it gives us a really good feeling. How could a church do such things? And we're quite right, aren't we, to disassociate ourselves from them. But it's not about our good feelings that we really need to think, because there are perhaps wiser and stronger measures which can be taken on this issue. In the first place, we have to be clear that not all the Russian Orthodox Church support their patriarch in this stance. I've already quoted to governing body the words of Metropolitan Onufry of Kiev, and speaking as a Russian Orthodox in Ukraine. The religious situation in Ukraine is very complicated. There are at least 3 Orthodox churches, and only one of them is bound to the Moscow Patriarchate. Metropolitan John of Dubna, the leader of the Russian Orthodox in Western Europe, has taken a similar stance. And even inside Russia, there is a petition from 300 clergy asking Patriarch Kirill to revise his view and speaking against the war. 300 clergy doesn't seem much until you recognize that each of those 300 are facing likely imprisonment and the loss of their livelihoods for taking such a stance. And so I'm very grateful to our President and for governing body for allowing this emergency motion this morning. What does the motion do? Well, it doesn't directly articulate the response of the Church in Wales to the war. The Archbishop has already done that in his presidential address, and the motion does make clear the Church in Wales' view that the war in Ukraine is an unprovoked war of aggression. What it does is it takes up the request that was presented to us and asks the World Council of Churches to take appropriate action, but then gives the World Council the widest berth for what that action should be. We hope to see a debate on this issue at Central Committee in June. It will certainly be a matter for consideration at the World Assembly in September. By taking this act, we are asking Christians globally to take a stand for peace and to express our concern for the way in which peace may be built, not just in this war, but after the war, when we may well need the Russian Orthodox Church to change. Father John, in his prayers this morning, prayed that the leaders of churches supporting the Ukrainian war would repent. And it's that repentance and the hope of future reconciliation that we want and need. So let's empower the World Council of Churches to do its work and support this motion. Thank you very much.
And I understand Sir Paul Silk is seconding the motion. Sir Paul?
Thank you, Clive. I'm pleased to second this motion. We are a small church in international terms. That means we have a particular responsibility to support the oppressed, and in this case, the people of Ukraine. As Bishop Gregory has outlined, the Russian Orthodox Church has always been very close to the state. The two-headed eagle of Russian heraldry symbolizes that. And Patriarch Kirill's relationship with the state, as Bishop Gregory has outlined, are all too notorious. So it should be no surprise to us that the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia has supported the war. There is a compelling case, as Rowan Williams has said, for the Russian Orthodox Church to be expelled from the World Council of Churches. And there can be few Anglicans who understand Russia better than Rowan Williams. But I understand the concerns that the Bishop of St. Asaph has expressed today and yesterday. The motion before us allows some flexibility, so the Church in Wales could, if it decided in the future, support any proposal that the Russian Orthodox Church should be excluded from the World Council of Churches. Members of the governing body may well know that since 2019, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church has been recognized by the Patriarchate of Constantinople as an autocephalous, it's a difficult word to say, an autocephalous church in the Orthodox Communion. It represents most of the Orthodox in Ukraine. It's headquartered in St. Michael's, the wonderful Golden Dome Church, which we've all too regrettably seen too often on our news media, and where I've had the privilege of attending Divine Liturgy myself on several occasions in the past. If the Russian Orthodox Church moves to exclude the Ukrainian Orthodox Church from the World Council of Churches, then I certainly hope that the Church in Wales will consider whether the more appropriate church to be a member of our koinonia is the Ukrainian Orthodox Church rather than the Russian Orthodox Church. But on that basis, I'm very happy to second this motion and to support it fully. Thank you.
The motion is before us, has been proposed and seconded, is now open for debate. Would you please come to both lecterns if you wish to contribute towards the debate?
Sarah Rowland-Jones, Dean of St David's, elected Dean. I'm speaking partly at the behest of others. Since 1999, when I was ordained, 3 weeks after I became a deacon, I received a fax from the Church in Wales office when the then bench appointed me for some international Anglican ecumenical work, which I've been doing ever since. And since 2009 in particular, I've been the convener of ecumenical work within the Inter-Anglican Standing Commission for Unity, Faith and Order. If we were Roman Catholics, it would be the Curia, but it has no teeth whatsoever, and nobody's ever heard of us, but don't call me Sarah Ratzinger-Jones. But from that perspective, I wanted to speak a little bit about what might be thought to be a parallel. I did spend 11 years in South Africa, and obviously there we had to deal with the aftermath of apartheid. The Dutch Reformed Church, which of course is not in the Netherlands, but the Holy South African White Afrikaner Church, supported apartheid in a way which is, we might think there are similarities, but there are many differences to what we're seeing from the Moscow Patriarch himself and his Patriarchate. Many decades, deliberately, comprehensively,
expelling dissenters, until the point that they even commissioned theological studies to justify the apartheid state and its governance. This was in the face of consistent opposition from the wider Christian world, and ultimately it was the World Alliance of Reformed Churches that decreed that apartheid was heretical and expelled the Dutch Reformed Church. They actually jumped ship from the World Council of Churches, which had also persistently censured them, rather than it ever coming to the point of expulsion. And so I mention that because the World Council of Churches is the body which does censure, but even, for example, when former Yugoslavia fell apart, Serbia, Croats and other Christians supporting nation states against one another, even then there were not expulsions. Bringing me back to the Orthodox body, I'm grateful to Bishop Gregory for his wider explanation of some of the tensions between Russians and other, particularly in Kiev, but these go more widely. For the last 7 years, I've been a member of the International Commission for Anglican Orthodox Theological Dialogue. And if you want to hear anything about the complications of the Mongols in Kiev in the 13th century, find me later. But it does seem to me that what we're facing from the Metropolitan himself is part of a longer tension and really a very difficult situation within the wider Orthodox family of churches about what it means to be Orthodox in the 21st century world. And that the Moscow line and other churches are very much of a very hardline, conservative, extreme right, nationalist, unbending view that condemns everything that doesn't agree with them, and particularly those, and I think so that what I like about this motion is in two ways. One, it particularly gives us capacity to support those within the Russian Orthodox Church who are asking for a different approach. And secondly, it gives us capacity to support the Orthodox world in their own internal difficulties over a couple of decades about what does it mean to be contemporary Christians, rather than fueling those who can then present themselves as extreme victims of nasty Western, secularized, liberalized, compromised Christianity. Whereas actually within all of those bodies, we want to help those who are trying to live true to Jesus Christ within the complexities of their own cultures and the changes of contemporary living, but in a way that is honest to that sense of the incarnation, that we are Christians as the world is, and not as we say it ought to be, condemning out of hand those who are not like us. And so it seems to me that this best supports those who need the long-term help for the bringing together, see how these Christians love one another so that the world may believe.
Nick Griffin, St. David's Diocese. Your Grace, comrades, it occurred to me that most of us, or many of us, will have attended community events to support Ukraine over the last few weeks. We will have raised money and in our particular case sent it to Christian Aid to support the Ukrainians. We are looking forward to welcoming several Ukrainians into the village where I live, although they haven't arrived yet, but we're hoping they'll arrive shortly. And several people said to me, is there not more we can do to support and help the people in that land? I started thinking about it, and it occurs to me that should we not link as dioceses with the dioceses, or whatever they call them, in Ukraine, because when this ghastly problem is over, there is going to be a vast rebuilding program that needs to take place. Could we not now, either as dioceses or as a province, start to raise money to rebuild the Christian infrastructure in that place? Thank you.
Richard Wood, elected Bangor. Jesus calls us in Matthew's Gospel to love those who hate us and to pray for those who persecute us. Our brothers and sisters in many parts of the world, including Ukraine, are clearly hated by some and persecuted by the same. He also gives us the rule to call those amongst us who sin, to let them know their sin, to give them the opportunity to repent, and if they don't, to bring it before the whole church. And then, if they still refuse to repent, to treat them as you would a tax collector or a sinner. I support this motion because it gives us the opportunity to follow and echo those commands and instructions to us, particularly to continue to love those who hate and persecute, and to treat them as we would, and as Jesus would, a sinner, to call them home. If the World Council of Churches ends up needing to censure or even to expel the Russian Orthodox Church, our response to them needs to continue even beyond that, to call them home. Thank you.
Gethin Rhys Cytun, mi siarad yn Gymraeg. Llywydd, diolch yn fawr am y cyfle I drafod y mater pwysig yma, y penhawn yma. I ddechrau just fel darn o wybodaeth, ers rhai blynyddoedd bellach diw Eglwys Union Gred Rwsia ddim yn aelod o Cytun, na chwaith o Eglwys Ynghyd ym Mhrydain ag Iwerddon. Fe dynodd yr Eglwys allan am resymau sydd ddim yn ymwneud ag Ukraine rhai blynyddoedd yn ôl. Dwi'n ddiolchgar I ddeion Tyddewi am dynnu sylw at y paralel gyda De Affrica. Dwi eisiau tynnu sylw at un arall, sef cyfnod y rhyfel oer. Fe gadwyd Eglwys Union Gred Rwsia o fewn Cyngor Eglwysu'r Byd gweithaf I chefnogaeth ar hyd y blynyddoedd i'r Llywodraeth Gomiwnyddol ar y pryd. Wrth gwrs, chododd ddim rhyfel yn yr un ffordd ag sydd wedi codi gydag Ukraine, ond fe gadwyd yr eglwys o fewn y cwlwm y Cyngor Eglwysu'r Byd trwy'r gydol y cyfnod yna. Fe brofodd hynny fod yn arbennig o bwysig pan syrthiodd wal Berlin ac fe chwalodd yr Undeb Sofietaidd yn rhyfeddol o gyflym a rhai ohono ni ddigon hen I gofio mewn llai na 2 flynedd. Ac yn y cyfnod yna, yr eglwysi Cristnogol oedd un o'r ychydig sefydliadau gorllewinol oedd â chysylltiadau hir dymor a real gyda phobl yn Rwsia, oherwydd I ni gadw'r drws ecumenaidd yn agored gweitha yn hanes mwythder yn aml iawn gyda rhai o'r pethau oedd yr Eglwys Union Gred yn dweud bryd hynny. A mi oedd modd wedyn I tynnu Eglwys Union Gred Rwsia o leia am gyfnod yn llawnach I fywyd y byd Cristnogol ehangach. Mi fyddwn ni hefyd yn tynnu sylw at y ffaith paradoxaidd falle, pan mae ffoaduriad o Ukraine yn cyrraedd y wlad hon fel maen nhw, nifer fach iawn o eglwysi Union Gred sydd yn addoli trwy gyfrwng yr Wcraineg. Ac felly lle mae ffoaduriad yn mynd, maen nhw'n mynd I addoli yn eglwysi Union Gred Rwsia yn y wlad hon. A mae rhaid I ni sylweddoli, petai ni'n taflu Eglwys Union Gred Rwsia allan o'r Cyngor Eglwysu'r Byd, byddwn ni'n taflu'r ffoaduriaid yna o Ukraine allan o gymundeb Eglwysu'r Byd hefyd, oherwydd yn yr Eglwysi Rwsiaidd yn y wlad hon, mae rhan fwyaf ohonyn nhw, os ydyn nhw'n mynd I addoli yn y traddodiad Union Gred, yn gorfod gwneud. Ac felly, dwi'n ddiolchgar iawn i'r Eglwys yng Nghymru am gyflwyno'r cynnig yma. Mae'r cwestiwn yma wedi cael ei godi wrth gwrs gan aelod enwadau eraill Cytun. Chi yw'r cyntaf digwydd bod I fod â chynhadledd lle chi wedi gallu dod I benderfyniad. Dwi'n credu falle bydd y penderfyniad hwn o gymorth I enwadau eraill wrth drafod yr un materion hefyd. Diolch yn fawr chi. Diolch.
Your Grace, Bench and members of governing body, at the end of lockdown, the church that I attend, St John's in Canton, Cardiff, was approached by a church that was homeless and consequences of lockdown had left them without a home. And it's a Russian Orthodox church, and they have become loved and valued members of our church family. And it was a surprise to us to learn that the majority of their congregation are actually Ukrainian. And the church that they have built in our building has become a centre for people of Orthodox faith, and they travel from astonishing distances, knowing that this is a place, the church in Wales, that our building is a place where they are welcomed, valued and loved, and they have a wonderful community that meet. And we have great joy in welcoming them to be part of our community. And I really welcome this motion, and I thank you for phrasing it in the sensitive and caring way that you have, Bishop Gregory, because it says that we are still inclusive of those people who align themselves with Orthodox faith, and in this country particularly have nowhere but the Russian Orthodox Church in which to worship. And the Ukrainian brothers and sisters that we love in Canton, as I've already said, are much valued and much loved members of our community. And so I think this is a really important way forward for us to both support them and show our love and care and concern for their plight and situation, the families that they love and are worried and concerned for, as well as acknowledging the severity of the issues that they're facing in Ukraine at the moment. And I urge support for this bill. Thank you.
Before I ask Bishop Gregory back, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Bishop Gregory.
Archbishop, brothers and sisters, I'm extremely grateful for a short but extremely useful and valuable debate. Sarah, Richard, Gethin and Andrew have all added different facets of understanding to the complexity of the situation and the depth of our concern for good relations with the Russian Orthodox Church and the complexity of church relationships at the global level. I hope that's helped the governing body to understand the situation more comprehensively and to support this motion. I'm particularly grateful to Nick for his contribution because he's helped raise our horizons beyond the current conflict to the way in which, as a church in Wales, we might support the rebuilding of Christian infrastructure after the war. And I'm sure that his idea has merit and that the bench of bishops will be willing to hold that suggestion and look at it more fully and perhaps find ways of taking it forward in the future. Thank you very much for the debate. I urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Gregory. The motion is before us. If you would like to support this motion, could you please show? Thank you very much. Are there any against? Are there any abstentions? That is unanimous. The motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Right, I think we'll start, if need be, at the cost of shaming those who are sauntering in late. We're on item 18, the bill to authorise and regulate minor variations to authorised liturgies. You have the report of the Select Committee, the bill with the amendments proposed by the Select Committee is at Appendix 1, pages 6 and 7. Appendix 2 contains the text of another earlier proposed amendment that is not, however, to be moved. And Appendix 3 is the explanatory memorandum. Under the bill procedure, the governing body has been informed by the Select Committee and the Standing Committee that they deem the bill to be non-controversial. This means that in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, there are two possible ways in which this item can be dealt with, well or badly. Sorry, I fluffed that. there are two possible ways as follows. First, the default position, which will operate unless the alternative is triggered, is that we go directly and without any debate to a vote on the motion that the bill, as set out in the report, that is, including the Select Committee's amendments, be passed. The alternative, which will only arise if it's triggered in a manner that I'll describe in a moment, is that we go into committee. That will be done if there is the necessary desire to give individual consideration to the respective amendments proposed by the Select Committee, or if there is to be a debate on the substantive motion that the bill be passed. This will only happen if either any one diocesan bishop or any other 10 members of governing body rise in their places when given opportunity in a moment to do so. In that event, the members of governing body will be transformed in the twinkling of an eye into members of committee, and I shall invite the Venerable Paul McNess to take the chair. After the conclusion of the committee stage, governing body will reconvene. I shall take the chair. We shall then have a debate on the bill and then go to the vote. I hope that's clear. So I invite anybody who wants the bill to go into committee stage, please to stand in his or her place. Good. That's the well option. In those circumstances, I invite the Bishop of St. Asaph, for whose wisdom in the last motion we're grateful, formally to propose the motion that the bill, including the Select Committee's proposed amendments, be passed.
I formally do so.
Thank you. And I understand that the Assistant Bishop in Bangor intends to second the proposal.
I formally do likewise.
Thank you very much. Then we shall proceed to the vote on the motion as I've indicated it. The vote is by order. For the avoidance of doubt and picking up on one of the questions asked yesterday, the Assistant Bishop in Bangor will vote with the clergy, not with the bishops. The first vote, therefore, will be the vote of the laity. A 2/3 majority is required in each house or each order. Voting is by raising your voting card, and I'd ask, please, that people, when they vote, hold them aloft so that they can easily be counted, because they will have to be counted. So will the laity please vote first? Those in favour of the motion.
counters are ready, so we can...
And would those against please now vote? None. And any abstentions? One at the back, I can see. Thank you. Now to the order of clergy. Those in favour? Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. I'll receive those votes. The voting in those orders is as follows: in the order of laity, 47 for, none against, 1 abstention. In the order of clergy, 36 for, none against, and no abstentions. I therefore ask the diocesan bishops if they wish to withdraw before voting. For a couple of hours? We've got plenty of time. In that case, I ask the bishops to vote, please.
In favour?
Yes.
3, 4, 5, 6, that's everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. The bill having been approved, I cede the chair to the President.
I hereby promulgate this bill as a canon of the Church in Wales, and it shall henceforth be a law of the Church in Wales and binding on all members thereof. Do I need to sign something?
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Thank you, everyone, for your time at Governing Body. It's much appreciated, especially those who've had to concede holiday time if you're in full-time employment to be here. We do so appreciate the commitment that is given to our debates. It's really important that we learn to confer well together to shape a good future for our church. Thank you ever so much, all of you, for attending this governing body, especially those of you for whom it was your first occasion. It's great to have you here. There are no current members of the governing body or the panels of chairs or senior clerics who are to cease membership of the governing body before our next meeting. So in that sense, there are no farewells to note. I would like, however, to announce the next ordinary meeting of the governing body will take place on Wednesday and Thursday, the 7th and the 8th of September 2022, here at ICC Wales. And as we conclude, I'd like to say a word of thanks, if I may, to the staff here at ICC. The quality of the food, the venue, but most important of all, the service, the technical help and the courtesy that they've brought to their work has been exemplary, and we have sent a card on our behalf to them to thank them for that. We hope this will be a good and ongoing relationship between ourselves and the ICC. It's been really good for us to be here. Can I also thank all the staff who've made GB happen, and the technical staff in particular: Leon Hughes, Mike Wakeman, Paul Ankin, Alex Perry, Ryan Davis, Jonathan Osborne and Bradley Charlton, all of whom have helped make the meeting run smoothly. Thank you ever so much for your work. It's really appreciated. Diolch hefyd Tudur am eich cyfieithiad. Dyn ni'n ddiolchgar iawn am eich gwaith. Thank you, Tudor, for your work. As ever, much appreciated. Can I thank all those members who've taken particular tasks and responsibilities, such as acting as chairs and in arranging our worship, particularly Father John. Once again, thank you ever so much, John, for your work. Again, exemplary as worship coordinator. Could I thank my chaplain, James, for all he has done to make this happen, and also the Reverend Canon Pam Powell. Highlights, once again, will be available on the website within about 2 weeks of our meeting. This is a valuable aid for members reporting back. As members of governing body will know, we learned halfway through last week that one of the hotels with which we had confirmed a booking for over 60 rooms was no longer available. And that is because it was required to house refugees from Ukraine. I'd like to pay tribute to all from the provincial team who made alternative arrangements at such short notice. But in particular, I would like to express a huge thanks to Helen Clifford, who undertook a huge amount of work to ensure that we were all accommodated and things worked smoothly. We ought to thank Helen, particularly with a round of applause. Shall we stand for a moment of quiet, and then I shall ask God's blessing. God, our strength and our Redeemer, giver of every good and perfect gift, for the gift of life, for our fellowship, for all that builds our common unity, we give our thanks and praise. And may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. A bendith Dyw holl alluog, a tad, a mab a'r ysbryd glân, a fo yn eich plith, ac a drigo gyda chwi yn wastad. Amen. Let us go in peace to love and serve the Lord. In the name of Christ. Amen.